Hello everyone and welcome back to the SULS podcast. It's an honour to be back once again for another instalment of our show. And first and foremost, I just want to say happy first day of the new semester. The new academic year starts right now. The first week of the new semester is finally here. It's been a long summer, but it's also been quite a quick summer as well, I'm sure, for a lot of people. So welcome to our new freshers who are starting on their law course for the first time this week. I hope everything goes well in the first week, whether you're new or whether you're returning. Hope everything goes great, and I hope you get stuck into your new modules and hopefully see a lot of you around the campus again for the first time in what has been far too long. Now, for today's episode, I'm joined by a fourth year student at the University of Stirling. He's currently on the LLB degree. His name is Kyle Ogden, and he's an active member of our society. And first, I have to say a massive thank you to Kyle for coming on completely last minute. We were supposed to have another guest on, it didn't go to plan, and this episode was actually recorded on the Sunday evening whilst Kyle was up in St Andrews visiting his girlfriend. So I have to say a massive thank you to Kyle for stepping in last minute and pulling his episode forward. He wasn't supposed to be on the show for another few weeks yet, but he was happy to step in the last minute and make sure we had an episode going out this week. So yeah, massive thank you to Kyle. Really appreciate him stepping in at the last minute and really getting us out of a hole. It wouldn't have been great to kind of break the whole weekly schedule, kind of the first hurdle. So massive thank you to Kyle, and we're here to discuss the uni deferral system. Basically, obviously we'll go into more detail in the episode itself, but we're here to discuss the deferral system at the University of Stirling and how you can use it to defer your exams for one reason or another. And we just wanted to kind of touch on this to make people aware of the fact that it's there for people if they need to use it. Kyle speaks in this episode about how he used it himself, why he used it, and how it was beneficial for him, and how obviously things happen in life, and exams are obviously set in a timetable, and you might feel a bit trapped and you're not really in control of things that crop up in life. Obviously things crop up at different times, and that's what the deferral system is there for, to allow you to set your exams at a later date, to allow you to take care of whatever it is that's just kind of cropped up out of the blue. And that's what I want to discuss. I want to link it back to mental health as well, which Kyle does lovely in this episode and really kind of touches on that subject as well. So yeah, I suppose I've rambled for long enough, so let's jump into the episode. Again, thank you so much to Kyle for coming on last minute. It's massively appreciated, and hopefully you guys find this useful.
Welcome to the Stirling University Law Society podcast, proudly sponsored by Ashurst Advance, creating client value through advanced thinking. Now, over to your host and Vice President, Jedd France.
So, Kyle, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on for the first time. Obviously, we're here to discuss the deferral system at the University of Stirling, but before we jump into the episode itself, I just want to ask how your summer's been and how much are you looking forward to the new academic year beginning?
Thanks very much for having me, Jedd. It's a pleasure. It's been something I've wanted to come on for a while, but I'm just happy it's finally happened. My summer's been stressful but enjoyable. I started an internship at Worklife solicitors, and the experience was outstanding. And I ended up moving to another law firm as well, Marshall Wilson in Falkirk, and yeah, it's really enjoyable. Both of them are outstanding law firms, but like I'm saying, going from whole academia in the university sense to in the practical sense has been really different and eye-opening and a little bit stressful, but I've managed to work through it. So yeah, good but stressful.
Yeah, I've seen on your LinkedIn and stuff, I've seen the posts come out from Watt Law and Marshall Wilson. It looks like you've had a rather busy summer, but I'm sure it'll be experiences that really help you moving forward. Obviously going into your fourth year, that kind of exposure to the legal world and working in firms of that size, well, it's just going to give you loads of responsibility as well. I think that's something that is a really kind of benefit from working at a firm like that. So I think it'll stand you in really good stead, mate. It looks like you've been doing absolutely amazing with it. So yeah, absolutely amazing achievement getting that, and hopefully that'll just keep pushing on through the semester as well. So like I mentioned at the start, we are here to discuss the deferral system at the University of Stirling, and just as a kind of precursor for this. All the information in this podcast will be released in a blog post which Kyle has kindly put together for us. It's going to be released on the SULS website. I'm not exactly too sure when it's going to be published. We'll obviously keep you up to date with that as it kind of comes out. But before we jump into the kind of ins and outs of the deferral system, Kyle, I think it's probably best that we kind of set the scene in case anyone's in first year or perhaps not even at university yet and isn't really too sure what the deferral system is. Would you like to just kind of give us a bit of background as to what we mean when it comes to like deferring an exam?
Yeah, not a problem, Jedd. So a deferral is essentially if you're struck by any hardships during your studies at the university, or any university for that, it's, you know, a blanket statement for all unis. If something comes up, like the death of a family member, you have a medical issue, a mental health problem, it's essentially just a concession intended to allow you, a student, who's unable to attend on the day of the exam, whether it be online or in person, and due to whatever's happened, there's a massive list of things to qualify to get the deferral, and they can all be found on the university website and the blog post when it does come out. It can be that you're hospitalised, even attending court, medical reasons or compassionate grounds, a wide range of numbers or grounds on which your exam may be deferred. And it's really just a safety net for you as a student if you are struggling to be able to sit your exam when you are in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, and like Kyle says, it's, you know, there's quite a wide variety of different grounds that you can get a deferral for. It's not as simple as, you know, waking up on the day of your exam thinking, you know what, I can't really be bothered doing this. I was out on the lash last night, so I don't really fancy doing this exam. Obviously there is kind of strict grounds there, but there is, like Kyle mentioned as well, there's quite a wide variety. So once the blog post comes out, there's links and stuff to the actual grounds, but you can find it all on the university website, and I'll make sure to put the links for that in the description of this podcast as well. So jumping into your experience with the deferral system, Kyle, take us back to that time in your life. At what point in your university journey did you find yourself turning to the system?
It was definitely a hard time, and I'm not really someone that's ever struggled mentally. And I'd always kind of prided myself in that, in a sense, that I could always brush stuff off, and sometimes friends would joke that I was pretty emotionless in that sense. But it came to a point where I was doing like 9 till 12 at night shifts in the library, as well as working full time and trying to take on, you know, the honours modules and go in as much as I could. All my effort to try and obtain, you know, the 2-1, the firsts, to get the grades that are required for the postgrad and for traineeships, and it was all that was going through my mind. Every second I was awake was studying law, doing law, everything. And I got to the point where I was suffering with panic attacks, I couldn't sleep, I was loads of things. The point that I broke was one night in particular, and I was in my accommodation and I was crying, and I just couldn't stop, and I just knew there and then I had to do something, take action for my own mental well-being, because I couldn't continue going on the way it was. And I reached out to lecturers who were overly helpful, and all of them are a credit to the uni for the way they helped me through it and pointed me in the right direction and stuff, because at that time I wasn't really sure what help was available, and they gave me the options, and that's really when I knew the deferral system was an option, because I never really knew before, and it was then I decided that was the route for myself.
Yeah, it definitely takes a brave person to admit that on a podcast, so I'm really grateful that you've opened up like that, Kyle. And as someone myself who's also suffered throughout my academic studies with different mental health issues, I can totally relate to what you're saying when it comes to, you know, late night studying, and you just keep plugging away day on day, and it just gets harder and harder, and you try and put it to the back of your mind and kind of forget about it and say, okay, I've just got to get past this exam, get past this assignment or whatever it may be, and I'll be all right. But it's never as simple as that, and I think, like you mentioned, things will always come to a head, and I think it's really good that you had that support from the lecturers as well. And I've reached out to lecturers in the past, and they always seem more than happy to do as much as they can to support you. So in the blog post that we mentioned, I know you mentioned one lecturer in particular. Would you like to give a special shout out to that lecturer, because it's someone who's helped me as well, and I think they deserve to have that praise on this public platform?
Yeah, the lecturer we're both talking about is fantastic. I've spoke to him as well and about including him in the blog post and stuff, so he's fine with being on the podcast. He gave me the right guidance. It's Sam Abode, that is. He gave me the right guidance, and he took the time. I think it was 2 or 3 days, or maybe even the day before the competition law exam, when I'm sure he's getting an abundance of emails and everything from people trying to try and squeeze information out of him before an exam or whatever. But he took that time out to Skype call me, and me alone, and make sure I was okay, first and foremost. And secondly, he laid out all the options, so taking a year out, the deferral system, or just braving the exam and seeing how it went. And he offered to Skype me 3 times after that as well, to reassure me for the exam. And personally, I've never received that of any lecturer at all. It's it went well beyond his duty of care towards me as a student, and I'm overly appreciative of that. And I know the law school's undergoing massive changes at the moment in terms of personnel coming in, but I do feel Sam, in terms of the lecturer and student relationship, should be the standard that everyone should be held to, because without him, I genuinely believe I would have taken a year out at best, and at worst I dropped out of law school, because at that time and how I was feeling, without his guidance and set me on a direction and a path to go on, I don't see myself continuing with the course at all. So I'm overly indebted to him for life. He helped me out massively. So yeah, if you're listening, Sam, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to pass this podcast on to Sam and let him know that he gets a special shout out, because I really do think he deserves it, like I mentioned. And he's helped me, I'm sure he's helped loads of different people. We have quite a close relationship with him at SULS, and he's absolutely fantastic. He's one of my favourite lecturers. I've no shame in admitting that Sam is one of my favourite lecturers. It's why I'm taking 2 of his modules this year in my 3rd year, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in. And yeah, just an absolute massive shout out to Sam, because like Kyle mentioned, that support, like you mentioned, without that support, who knows where you could be today. And I think Sam deserves massive credit for that, and so do you, Kyle, for coming through that and getting to the end of it as well. So you kind of touched on it before, but at what point in this semester did you seek your deferral? So was it weeks in advance, or was it closer to the exam diet?
It was genuinely, I'd considered it 2 weeks before it actually happened, and at that point I was just telling myself, you're overthinking it, you'll be fine, it's an exam. How many exams have you sat? In my head I was just like, grow up, you'll get over it. And that was the mindset I had at the time, just to push through it, and it'll be Christmas after that, so just suffer it and you'll have the break and you'll get over it. But like I said, I had that moment in my flat, and all that occurred. But it was literally maybe 3 days before the competition law exam I decided, not decided, but better put, I knew that I couldn't sit the exam. I knew I wasn't in the right frame of mind. As much as I'd dealt with exam stress before, and I'd been able to push through stuff similar to that, and I'd been under pressure before and I'd managed to move on with it, I never felt like that in my life, ever. It was bad, and I just knew there and then, 3 days before an exam, I can't do it. I can't sit the exam. So I decided to message Sam and just let him know, and he was more than happy to help me through it and discuss me through my options, and then eventually allow me to defer the exam.
Yeah, I think we can all tell the difference when we're coming to exams and different types of stress and different big occasions which are causing us to feel nervous or anxious, or a whole abundance of different negative emotions. We can tell a difference from just normal nerves. We all went into an exam and felt nervous. Obviously you're going to feel nervous because you're sitting in an exam. It's quite a stressful time, but like you mentioned, it's not something you felt before. And I think a lesson to take away from that for everyone is just listen to yourself and listen to what you're feeling. Don't try and downplay it in your head, because I've definitely done that before myself. I think we just kind of need to accept the way we are feeling, and if it does feel as bad as Kyle felt, then there are options there for you. That's what this podcast and the ultimate blog post are all about. There's options for you to make sure that you're not just going to have to, like Kyle said, suck it up and get through it, and ultimately probably do more harm to yourself by doing that, as opposed to taking the break that you need, deferring the exam, and ultimately doing it when you feel right and it feels a lot better for you to do it. So in terms of the deferral itself, Kyle, how did you go about getting it? Did you have, like you mentioned, you spoke to Sam, so does Sam put it through for you? Did you have to speak to anyone else at the university? Did you have to fill in like an application form for it? What was that process like?
For me personally, I had to fill out a form from the student, essentially the people that help with stuff like that, and they sent me a form to fill out explaining why I couldn't sit the exam, what was wrong with me at the time, and what exam it was, and I needed a doctor's note as well. So as much as I know there is a little bit of a stigma, and I'm no shame in saying it myself, I've thought it before, like people pushing back exams and stuff. There is a stigma in terms of you're pushing it back to get more time to study, and I can say after experiencing this, it's not that at all, because after all of that and requiring the doctor's note and stuff, it's clear that there is certain boundaries put in place to ensure that that isn't the case. And I had to go get assessed, get the doctor's note, etc, etc. And once I had that, I knew I could move forward with the deferral system and get my examination pushed back until springtime.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about people perhaps thinking that people who defer exams are just looking for more time to study, I think that whole stigma that you mentioned kind of leads nicely onto my next question, and it's to do with when you deferred your exams, when were they rescheduled for? Because I have this knowledge in my head, and I know it's not as simple as you're going to get an extra 6 months to study, you're not going to have anything else to worry about, that's the only exam you're going to have. I know what you're about to say, Kyle, it leads to a lot of stress, and it leads to a lot of congestion with exams. So like I said, when you deferred your exams, when were they rescheduled for, and how did you find that process as well?
My exams were deferred until the 17th of May until the 21st of May, and the normal examinations would take place between the 26th of April until the 14th of May. Now, to take away from that, you've got the 14th of May is the last time your examination can take place. Your next exam after you've deferred it is the 17th of May. So that gives you a period of 3 days between your last exam and the normal exam diet and your deferred exam diet. Now, let's just say you were in such a state where you couldn't sit any of your exams. You would be in a position where from the 14th onwards, you could be sitting 6 exams in the space of a week. And for someone who was struggling with anxiety and having panic attacks, etc., a period of 7 days to sit 6 exams is unthinkable. And for me personally, I couldn't do it. I've asked many other students from Edinburgh, St Andrews, Glasgow. None of them could see it be conceivable, especially if you're already struggling with mental health issues, never mind being content with where you are mentally. So as much as the experience through the deferral system for me personally was good and positive, there's definitely scope for it to be improved, because it's not perfect, but it is still a good safety net to have in place for the students, because I have personally benefited from this being in place. But 6 exams in 1 week potentially is inconceivable.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to do very much for anyone's mental health, having to sit that many exams in such a short space of time. I think anyone, by the time that finishes, will just feel so mentally drained and need to take even more time off, because that will just it sounds horrific, and I really wouldn't wish it on anyone. And you're definitely a natural at this whole podcasting thing, Kyle, because that's another time you've just led me on very nicely to the next question that I want to ask. And You mentioned that you've had a positive experience with the deferral system, so would you say you're happy with your overall experience with it, and are there any other improvements you think the university could make to improve this experience for future students? Obviously you've been through it yourself, you've done it from start to finish, you've lived it, so as someone who's went through it, are there any other improvements you'd like to see the university make to make it better and easier for future students who go through the same experience?
Thank you very much, Jedd. I don't know if I'm a natural. I'm trying my best anyway. I wouldn't say my experience was 100% positive. So I looked at the fact that I could have 6 exams in such a short space of time, and following that, I considered my options, and I thought, with the way I was feeling at the time, I knew in myself I couldn't do it. I would need to take the year out. So I tried to be pragmatic about it, and I looked at my results prior to the exam. So in competition law I was sitting at a 2-1, labour law was sitting at a first, and I thought I'll brave the labour law exam because I'm sitting with a first. I think I needed 54% for a 2-1, and I thought there's no way I'm going to get below 54, even though I knew I wasn't in the right frame of mind to sit the exam. I just decided to go ahead with it anyway, just to get it out the road, to take pressure off myself the following semester. And what then happened following that was I had went from a first to a 2-2 on the basis of I got a third in the exam. And I know within myself, the only reason that occurred was because my mind was everywhere. It was everywhere bar that exam. I remember I just was not in the right frame of mind whatsoever. I should never have sat it, but it was that pressure from the lingering, you could be sitting 6 exams so close together, that made me push it back and decide to just brave it. Get one out the road and you'll be fine. And it should never have been that case. I know that for people, young people and adolescents, that 83% of people who are struggling with mental health at the moment, it's been worsened, and that's from Young Minds, a mental health charity. And a study from Oxford also shows that anxiety and depression is being accelerated by the lockdown and by the pandemic. And I just feel under those circumstances it's surreal to think that people can sit that many exams in such a close period, regardless if it's online or not. So for me personally, I do think for future students, as Jedd suggested, that there does need to be a change for those coming through, because it's just not doable. I'd pride myself on being quite bright, and I'd pride myself on being very hard working, and no matter how hard I worked, I could sit the 6 exams, but my grades would plummet on that basis, and that would just be from suffering from mental health issues and then being so close together, and that's not fair. So while there is a safety net there, it needs to be improved and it needs to be widened. But what's in place just now did help me, and I'm not saying don't use it, I'm not saying it's awful, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying Stirling Uni's bad, I'm just saying what's there the now is great. And I know what's in place the now is also what's in place at other universities such as Strathclyde, St Andrews, Glasgow. That doesn't mean that ours should remain the same, rather we should be shown leadership in this case for university and student relationships, and show that we do care for our students and that we will give them the level of support that they require to meet their potential. Because like I say, I could sit the exams, anyone in my position could sit the exams, but their grades are not going to reflect their true potential, and that's purely on the basis of cramming together the exams.
Absolutely, and I think it's totally fair and justified to say that you had a positive experience with it, but at the same time it's not a perfect system, like you mentioned, and there is improvement to be made. And I definitely echo what you're saying about we would like our university to show leadership on this front, because even prior to this podcast coming about and hearing about Kyle's story myself, I was thinking about the whole deferral system, and I knew that it the diet for it was literally the week after the exam diet itself. So if you're, say in the autumn semester, you defer those exams to the spring semester, you're going to have that 4 or 5 month gap from you finishing studying that module to sit in the exam on the back of another 3 modules or 2 or 3 modules coming about during that spring semester. And then all that knowledge you're going to have to try and cram in during an already hectic time in your life when you're preparing for 2 or 3 other exams. It seems quite bizarre. I'm not claiming to be an expert on this front. I can't sit here and give you a completely justified or perfect solution. I couldn't tell you another time to put the exams. That's not what I'm here for. I'm just kind of here to speak with Kyle and echo his opinions and his thoughts. And yeah, it just seems a bit flawed, and it just seems like it could lead to further mental health issues when you put so many exams together. But like I say, I don't have a solution to suggest, so that's really just me echoing what Kyle said. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums up everything I was looking to discuss, Kyle. Before we do wrap up, you've been very brave, very honest, and I really do appreciate the fact that you've come on and been so honest with us and with everyone about your struggles. And I think this will give a lot of confidence to people who find themselves in similar situations and who may be swaying whether or not to defer their exams, where they're thinking, you know what, I'll just brave it, I'll just get on with it, it'll be fine, or where they're thinking maybe I should listen to my head and my heart a bit more and think this is bad and I shouldn't just try and throw myself into it in case, like Kyle mentioned, get a result in the exam which doesn't actually reflect how you would have done in that exam should you have went into it with a clear mind. So I just want to give you the floor, Kyle, for as long as you want to offer any advice or any thoughts to anyone who's listening that may find themselves in a similar position to you.
All I can really say, following what Jedd has said, is if you are struggling, listen to yourself. Because I knew, like I said previously in the podcast, I knew 2 weeks prior that something wasn't right and I didn't listen and I tried to brave it, and it only led to further panic attacks, me in my flat, literally wailing and crying. And it's not funny to think about now, but it's weird to think that was ever a thing. And it's because I'd never ever given myself a work to life balance. I'd been doing 12-hour shifts in the library as well as working, and it's not fair to yourself if you're doing that. And yeah, you're just not really being fair to yourself. You really need to prioritise work to life ratios, and it's something that you need to carry with you even going into practice. People in practice at the moment, I've got it here, there's a quarter of family lawyers are on the verge of quitting due to the work-to-life balance, due to the workload. They're having to work through annual leave and they're feeling fatigued during the working day. And I can speak from working at Worklife solicitors and Marshall Wilson solicitors that they have an excellent work-to-life balance. It's a 9 to 5, it can go over that, but it's never anything really beyond the 9 to 5 unless it's a couple hours here or there. But that, I suppose, that's the profession you're going into, it's expected. There is a thing on Legal Cheek, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, and when you're applying to traineeships and stuff, if you are concerned about the work-to-life balance like myself, because I know how overwhelming this profession can be, it ranks law firms on their work-to-life balance and trainee contracts, how many they're offering and stuff like that. You can have a look yourself. And you can see for yourself, if you are applying to certain firms, whether that firm's right for you. Some people are fine working 14-hour days, 5-6 days a week. Fair enough if you want to do that. But if you go into Legal Cheek, it's there for you to see. And you can see the work-to-life balance, so you're not overwhelming yourself, and you know yourself how many hours you want to work or can work. And you're not stuck. I know for me, I always thought I'd be working 12-14 hours, but after going and working in several law firms, I can see the positive work-to-life balance that can be on offer. But I've went off on a tangent. More or less what I'm saying is, if you are having any doubts or struggles, listen to yourself and listen to your body. Again, echoing what Jedd's saying, So that's really all I have to say about it. It's a good system and it can be improved.
Yep, very well said, Kyle. Thank you very much. So that pretty much wraps us up, folks. Just before we do finish, I just want to thank Kyle again for coming on the show. Kyle, you've not heard the intro yet, obviously, but I do thank you at the very beginning of the podcast for coming on at the very last minute. I mentioned at the start, we're recording this on the Sunday evening. Kyle so kindly took time out of his Sunday away, his chill time, to come on the show and talk to me at the last minute. So I really am grateful for that, Kyle, and I massively appreciate it. And yeah, I just want to wish you well for your final year at Stirling Uni. I know it's your final year of the LLB. I want to wish you all the best for that, and I hope to see you at some of our upcoming events through the semester as well. So thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Jedd. It's been an absolute pleasure being on. Again, it's something I've wanted to do for a while, so I'm glad I've been able to come on and speak about something that's very important to myself.
Thank you for listening to the Stirling University Law Society podcast. Be sure to check out our website and social media pages through the links below.